Welcome back, everyone. I am thrilled to be joined today by Christopher Carter, who also goes by Casey. Christopher is the founder of This Epic Life, a website devoted to conscious leadership, which has created a daily meditation practice for thousands. He is the creator of the 4 Permissions framework, which guides his coaching of executive leaders at Amazon, AT&T, eXp Realty, Edward Jones, and many more. Casey is also a professional songwriter, TEDx speaker, and international retreat leader. And I should mention an author. On October 5th, Casey is releasing his book, Permission to Glow, a spiritual guide to epic leadership, which we'll be talking about today. So Casey, welcome to the show.
Awesome to be here, Kathy. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Well, before we dig into the book, I was hoping to have you share a little bit about your own journey that brought you to your current work. So on the podcast, we talk with people about building sustainable careers. And I think it's especially interesting to hear people's journeys in making later stage career shifts as well. So you went from working on the corporate side in sales, I believe it was, but maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that, to pursuing your current work as a business owner, sought after executive coach, and a meditation expert. So what drew you at the time to make this shift out of corporate work to pursue this work you're doing now? And kind of what were the signs that were drawing you to make a change?
Oh, yeah, this is a great question. So how I'm going to frame this is I'm going to start on kind of on the ethereal spiritual journey side of things. I'm a magnet for various healers and teachers, and one of my dear teachers, Alice Bandy, who has since passed on. She basically told me that there was my life up until the age of 40, and then my whole new life after the age of 40, almost as if I was reincarnating but keeping the body, kind of a thing. And my career was just one part of that. You know, like I was a sales director, as you mentioned. I led a sales team for a advertising technology company, rapid growth company, amazing company. We won a lot of awards for culture. I worked for them for about 9 years. And I always joked that the founder, CEO, Sean, would be the last person I worked for. He was just too great. I couldn't improve upon him. And I said I would go on my own after that. And so I took this sabbatical at the end of 2015, and 3-week sabbatical. We get it every 5 years. And as I was doing that, my position was eliminated. And by that point, I had moved into training and development. So I was starting to coach leaders. I was running a lot of programs and kind of preparing for what my career is these days. And once that happened and my career was eliminated, I had this great opportunity to just go out on my own. So it really unfolded organically and naturally. It's not to say that I slept great that first year, because when you have a family of 5 in tow and you're starting to live your big honking dream, it's terrifying and scary and you lose sleep. But it did work out as Alice and other people said it would. All my coaches and mentors said that you're built for this. You know, I leaned into coaching and started creating all the client base one by one.
That's great. And I love to hear how lucky for you that you had an amazing boss and that you had sabbaticals offered to you. So that's really wonderful. I think that's a great part of a culture. I'm kind of curious, several years in now and looking back, what do you know now on the other side? And you're still on your business building journey, right. But what do you know now that you didn't know then? And is there anything that surprised you most on this journey?
I mean, and it's not to jump into the book too quick, but honestly, these permissions, there's 4 permissions laid out inside the book, Permission to Glow. And back when I started the journey, I really just had the beginnings of the 3rd permission and the 1st permission, which is basically, I thought it was all about glowing in the dark, finding your full self-expression and just doing that on blast, unapologetically. But it's not really sustainable and it's exhausting and you feel like you're overperforming all the time. And so the thing I know now that I've kind of softened into, and maybe some of this comes with age, right? I think this is just kind of maturing into your body a little bit, is that I would be more chill about a lot of things. I would just focus more on the spiritual practice of just quieting the mind, more on the allowing side of things versus forcing it from sheer force of will. And the 2nd permission, which is probably the biggest for me, which is to feel the feels, to be authentic and letting my emotions guide me, because men especially just want to push them down or pretend they don't exist.
That's so great. And yes, we'll get into the permissions more. I look forward to digging into this. And I actually like that you just framed those up really quickly for us. Before we get into those, there are a few things I wanted to kind of probe on. In one, just to get it out of the way, right? So one is I just love the title of your book, partly because there are things in this title that you don't necessarily expect to see in a business book, right? Like glow. Like I'd love to do a search on Harvard Business Review and like see if there are any, unless you've already written for them, Casey, but like to see if glow shows up in any of their articles. Right. But you also bring together, right, spirituality and leadership. And I can imagine in business, for better or worse, like some people might get a little resistant to this idea of like, what do you mean bringing a spiritual practice and having that intersect with business and leadership? So what would you say to people that start to have that feeling? How do you kind of get people comfortable with this space that you really want to lead people into, and where you see a real unlock for people?
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, you're a coach, you get this, is that there's the reason why people want to hire you, what they want to create, and it's usually to accomplish the thing or to get the job or to do the thing. But what they end up needing from the coaching is who they get to become in the process. And as I define glowing is pretty much the embodiment of who you are and who you're meant to be. And to me, that is a spiritual conversation. So many leaders and busy business builders and people that are balancing families, everything else, we tend to get stuck in this trap of scarcity around our time or money and really it comes down to our capacity, like our capacity to hold more clients, hold more abundance, hold more love in our lives. And to me, that's a spiritual conversation, like full stop. I was lucky to discover yoga at a young age and get more into meditation. And as we meditate, we increase that capacity. And I think through great coaching, it's the same thing. I think just we've trained ourselves in corporate circles to kind of talk around it and to not use the G word, God or spirit so much, and just talk about capacity. And but yeah, I didn't chose this work. It chose me, and it's been kind of the hardest boulder to push in writing the book. Was that, wow, I have to step out now as somewhat of a spiritual teacher at this intersection and just be open to the conversation. And I get it that a lot of people have baggage around these words, myself included. And it might be really uncomfortable for some people. But what I mostly find, I mean, I don't know if you're like this, but my favorite coaching clients are the ones where I'm in like high level creative conversations with CEOs or C-level executives. And we're talking about meditation and yoga and going on retreats. And we're just talking about like the really finer embodied parts of life. And I think I'm getting paid for this, but by and large, those are the conversations those leaders want to be in. They're kind of good on the getting more crap done thing, So yeah, it's interesting that intersection is becoming more and more prevalent in my client base. Yeah,
that's really, really interesting, and it's actually heartening to hear, right, that you're seeing more leaders kind of open up to this. And I was curious, also, Casey, you labeled it epic leadership, and I'm wondering if is that a part of what makes it epic, or like how would you define epic leadership?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those words. My brand and my website's This Epic Life, So it was important to me when that aha came down. It felt like Clark Griswold seeing his Christmas tree, like a light was shining on it. I thought, oh my gosh, that's the thing, epic leadership, because it's to be determined by the leader. How do they define it is the more important question. But how I think about it is, life on earth in 2021, and especially running a business or running a giant team, I mean, it is plenty hard, full of tons of uncertainty. And what are the epic moments for us? It's the epic connections where we feel we're connected to ourselves and our leadership, we're connected to the others around us, and we're connected to something bigger than us, whether it's the company mission or it's some sort of vast, unspoken, benevolent force in the universe. And I think that's how I define epic leadership, where those moments when I'm with a client, and this is usually in Costa Rica where they're getting ready to cannonball off a cliff into like some pool of water, and they're looking me in the eyes thinking like, this is it. This is the moment that I get to do this thing. And those show up all day long in conference rooms. And so it's my job to help them be present to them. So that's how I think about epic leadership, is just being deeply present, I guess.
Yeah. It's so interesting because, so many people, I think that leadership or where one needs to focus is on the getting things done piece. But as you're even saying,
Sure.
like that, no, they're good at that, right? Like many of us are good at that. There's something else that is behind that. And you talk about this idea of being able to hold more. And you also talk about this idea of like people are longing for peace. And especially during our current modern lifestyle, and especially right now coming out of the pandemic, and so there's these other aspects that it sounds like you see in leaders and individuals, that people are yearning for something. And it's not just, it's kind of like, we can do all the doing, but what's really sustaining us, is a part of what I hear you talking about. Like, so can you say a little bit more about like, the peace, or like the peace we crave? Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I mean, the purpose of the book was peace, because if I could give anything to these incredible, high performing, super contributor type of leaders that I work with, it would be peace. And peace, on a spiritual level, is an aspect of God. God is infinite peace, infinite bliss. Peace is this thing on planet Earth that we dangle as a carrot that we never quite get to. Like if we wage a war, maybe we could get to peace. Or if we, drink 20 Red Bulls and work hard this week, maybe we could have a peaceful vacation next week. Not likely, but maybe, right? And I think of it in terms of, we're at peace when we have a sense of vocation in our work, when we are purpose-driven, purposeful, and or if we're on the path towards that, and we might have angst, we might not be there yet, but we are at peace in our journey. We have surrendered into the path. And I think our culture has done a great job of just amping so much of everything into just some ridiculous pace that peace is not quite possible. We want to think it is, but it's not. So the purpose of the permissions is to give one by one permission. It's a defiant act in this current environment to sit down and be quiet with ourselves, and then we start to realize when we do that, that the only peace that we're ever going to find, if it is attainable on this physical plane, is inside ourselves. So it starts with us, and then it starts with giving permission to others to do it. And peace just became this like real kind of pursuit for me. And I had to really rethink my own relationship to it. I'm not good at being, I'm a hard charging, glow in the dark type of personality. I like going full out. But when I realized what am I looking for in this journey, I just want to feel good in it. I want to be at peace with it.
Yeah, that's lovely and beautiful. And that resonates so deeply for me too. And yet I think for many of us ambitious folk, it's hard to allow us to kind of settle into that peace and to let go.
Well, one of the things that comes up with high performing, and who are the most likely to be a coach or to hire a coach? It's the high performers, right? We are achievers by nature. And we just don't, like, one of the things we do is we confuse contentment, which is a beautiful pursuit. I mean, who doesn't want to be content? It's like some synonym for peace, right? We confuse it with complacency. Like, oh, I'm being a lazy so-and-so if I just sit here and be for a little bit, and no, contentment's the goal. Like, why do we work so hard?
Yeah. So interesting. Yeah. Well, I'd love to, you started to frame up already kind of like the 4 permissions, and I've kind of held off long enough. Like, I'd love to hear more about the 4 permissions and introduce people to these and how it really impacts helping people become epic leaders.
Oh, thanks. Well, the first one, permission to chill, it's represented by the pause button. It's the defiant act of hitting the pause button in all of this chaos and creating a daily meditation habit. That's something I'm pretty adamant about with my leaders that I work with. Because when they do that, they're better able to be with what is, to accept what's actually going on, versus this permagrin mask we could put on of like, it's all good, I'm crushing it. That's just a defense against not being able to be with what is. it's sobering to actually look at your circumstances, to look at the shaken up snow globe that's spiraling around us at all times, and to find some way to be okay with that. And so yeah, it starts with permission to chill, just to slow down. And this is usually how I get people's attention on their way into my practice when I'm onboarding them. It's like, when are you going to slow the hell down? Who's going to do this for you? Nobody can do it for you. You have to give yourself the permission. And when they're able to do that, it creates just enough space to kind of build into the other four or the other three.
I love that permission to slow down, right? And I can see that catching people off guard a bit, because when do we allow ourselves? And you're right, like, who else is going to give you that permission, right? The world kind of continues to ask more and more of us. And unless we are the ones that kind of give us that permission, as you're saying, to hit the pause button, slow down, chill, pause, be for some amount of time, it's the world's just going to keep pushing us. So,
well, what's interesting about it too, I mean, I was talking to a client this morning who's actively pursuing like a huge new role in a different company. And usually he would go about that process from a place of proving, from almost desperation of like pitching and angling and, positioning his resume and experience. That's what we do. It's what we've been trained to do. And there's nothing wrong with it. But when he does it from chill, it's a whole different conversation, because he's just curious. He's from discovery. He's easy. It's more baller level. And all of the people are coming to him now. And that's the power of actually chilling when we want to just push forward all the time.
It's so interesting. That's, you think that being charged up is what's going to attract people to you. And it's actually like this calming presence actually is what draws people to you. Because it's so unusual and differentiated in the world today, right? To kind of provide people also that you become a magnet, I imagine, because you become that person that like really calms other people down. People are like, I want to be around that.
Yeah, or the compliment I would get, and it was usually from my positive nature. People would say, "What do you want, and where can I get some?" And I was like, "Well, I think that's a compliment." But yeah, I don't know if I'll ever be a chill person, but I am committed to practicing, and I'm committed to coaching it in others, because when they create that space around it, their real being can emerge, and not this performative aspect of being.
So, what's the second permission?
Yeah, this is where all of my personal breakthroughs are. Like all of my heartache, all of my hard work. My coach hammers me on this relentlessly. Is permission to feel all the feels, and it's represented by the unicorn. And the reason why it's represented by the unicorn, because truly rare and mystical is the human being that is open and vulnerable enough to share exactly how they're feeling. The antithesis is this rascally character I call Game Face, which is like we slapped on this protective. It's almost like a housewife in the 1950s, kind of everything's perfect here, nothing to see here. That's how most of us go about our professional career. But when we're willing to feel into what our emotions are telling us and listen to our feelings as data, we can be guided by them to address needs that we have. And also what's most powerful is to use our future feeling states as priming tools to how do we want to feel when we achieve this thing. High performers like Olympic athletes, Michael Phelps certainly figured this out. The guy wins the race before he jumps in the pool. It's because he knows what it feels like. He practiced it well to stand on the winner's block. And so feelings, it can't be overstated how powerful of a frontier this is. And it's getting a lot of press now. Thank God. There's a great book, Permission to Feel. There's a great book, Brene Brown's work certainly has opened the door for so many of us in this area. But I feel like most of us are just at the very beginning baby steps of learning how to like even hear, let alone articulate our feelings. And that's permission to feel all the feels.
I love that. And it's so, I mean, especially in the business world, right? And that's where you're bringing this work is that, I mean, and obviously this applies outside of that as well, but this idea that, the game face, right? And like so often, this actually drove me nuts working in the corporate world oftentimes because I'm a little bit more of an emotional person. I'll just admit it. And I am not somebody who puts on a poker face very well. And so, they always say, like, especially to women, like, be the duck, be calm on top, like your feet are, going crazy underneath the water. And there's just something to me that always felt like just a little disingenuous. Like, I'm not saying like go crazy, like when there's a crisis happening, and present calm and guide people, but also acknowledge, the realities as opposed to kind of just suppressing everything. So I think there is a lot of power in this.
Well, I thank God we're starting to outgrow some of these antiquated, tips that we got. Be the duck. I just heard that version of it, and it reminds me of, Elsa's parents in Frozen, conceal, don't feel. And it's like, is that helpful? Really? I mean, yeah, there's a definite distinction between maintaining poise and composure. That's what we expect and need from our leaders. No reason to panic here. And, like the more seasoned CEOs I coach, they'll say that the most 7 powerful words in business are, I don't know. What do you think? Most of us get trained to this I got this mentality, which drives me up a flipping wall. When people like have their arms crossed, like, I got this, crushing it. I'm like, do you? Because like, I almost take that as sport to like, fire a missile their way to see if they really mean it. Because I think I got this is overcorrected confidence. And we're just protecting everyone from our true power. We're protecting ourselves from the unknown, which unfortunately includes all of our big dreams and goals. We don't know that we're protecting ourselves from that, but we can't let that into our experience if we're like doing the whole, I got this kind of thing. It's just funny to play with. And we notice it about ourselves. Like I do it all the time. When I notice myself slipping into, I got this, I'm like, no, I got to remember the 4th permission later on, which is we got this.
Right. Well, and one of the things I wanted to ask about this, and I think it relates to others as well. And I don't know if you see these this way, Casey, but as I was like playing with these in my own mind, I was kind of like, are these like counterpoints to each other? Or do they complement each other? So what I mean by it is kind of like, okay, well, you're saying permission to chill. So like, just be, but then also in that, you got permission to feel all the feels. So it's kind of like, how do I be, but then feel all this stuff? So how do you, and not also get overwhelmed by it, right? So, obviously like a meditation practice is probably going to help with that. But can you say, is there any, did you think about it that way at all? Or do these relate in some way like that?
Yeah. And I talk about it later in the book. And because we're so early on, I couldn't send you the full manuscript yet. But basically, there are ascending gates of accessing your own power. So before you could even have access to whatever it is that you're feeling, let alone glowing in the dark or the later ones, chill is the blank canvas you have to create to paint anything on, to be able to hear what your body is telling you. And I think of permission to feel. That feels our emotions, and our emotional system is a highly tuned instrument. And I think it's a gift from God to help us navigate, to help us connect with what we really need in the moment. We have been trained to not pay attention or even hear that by this busy, distracting world. And so and this at its core is very similar to yoga. The path of yoga is union with spirit. And that includes, a lot of meditation and quieting to see what comes up for us. And yeah, feeling can be dangerous too. I have to address in the book trauma. The trauma, when you turn on those faucets, sometimes some really gunky tar, gross stuff might come out of them, and we have to figure out a way to be with that. But we cannot be with that in any way if we're not willing to chill first, because it just pushes it down, avoids it. So yeah, thanks for asking it. They are ascending gates to claiming your power.
Really interesting. So I'd love to get to permission to glow in the dark. So permission number 3. Yeah. So introduce us to that. And also I'd love to hear in this, like you say, like this is often why people kind of come to you or want to work with you. So I'd love to hear a little bit like, why is that the case? Yeah.
Well, I think most people want their own version of full self-expression. We want to figure out what we're here to do, and we want to get permission to do it, and we want to get reinforcement that it's possible. And that's really alluring, and that's where the word glow came from. And at first I perceived the permission, like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I started using that language, and I thought it was just like throwing a switch and being like, I'm here, y'all, I'm glowing in the dark, And in the writing and the development of this over many years has been about the determination to glow. Like sometimes it's only just keeping the pilot light on the little dream to where we could eventually add more fuel to it and let it grow. So glowing in the dark is about self-actualization despite the ever-present fear. The darkness is the fear, and it's ever present. We all have to make peace with it. It doesn't go away no matter how incredible you are at what you do. It's always there. You always have some new edge, but just the willingness to glow in that darkness, I think, is what people are looking for. Just the strength and the audacity it takes to step out again and again into that darkness and figure out a way to glow. So that's kind of how it's evolved into it for me now.
I really love as you're introducing these more and more, Casey, it's like there's so much intentionality in the words and how these, someone might just see this and think like, hey, he came up with this clever thing, like permission to glow in the dark, right? And there's so much nuance and insight in what you're kind of expressing and the meaning in each of these. So what are some of your favorite examples of someone glowing in the dark?
Wow. Yeah. So I woke up this morning to my teenage daughter in tears. She's a professional singer. And I write about her in the book because she's had to sing like pretty big, high stakes performances with no voice. Like she'll get sick that day. But her willingness to go out there like a freaking warrior with no voice and still move a crowd of 1,000+ people, that is absolutely glowing in the dark, because who wouldn't be mortified or not want to go on stage if your instrument isn't working? So she's one of my total sheroes in that department, and she's a beast for that. I call it being open to fail but willing to fight. She was open to absolute failure but willing to fight anyway. And when my executive clients, it's all different versions of that same thing. When failure's absolutely on the table and they've acknowledged it, not this BS of I'm going to crush it and then they crush it. Like, what's interesting about that? That sounds like posturing. But when, saving your company from the brink of an existential financial crisis, raising the funding when you're terrified and not sleeping, coming through, those are the permission to glow, and glow in the dark. And also too, like when people have this energy of rocking a TED Talk, it's always been their dream of publishing a book, and they walk off stage to a standing ovation, and their energy is just like, because I said I would, and it's like dropping the mic, like just that full embodiment of I did the thing that I said I was going to do. That is the determination to glow in the dark, and truly, I think that's what the world is demanding of us right now. Like that is the medicine and the audacity that's going to give other people permission for the fourth permission, which is to come together and uplift people, is the willingness for these people to be brave and to glow in their own darkness. And it doesn't have to be some, crazy thing of stepping out on a giant stage. Glowing in the dark could look totally different from other people. Sometimes it's the simple things, but the willingness to do the thing you're here to do and to be brave about it. It's really important work.
Yeah. Gosh, I just love hearing you talk about that. I'm feeling it in my own body right now. My excitement for how you're just describing that and this desire, right? Like, and this is where, coaches, we want the best for our clients. We see the potential for our clients. We want them to glow in the dark, right? And hold that space for them. And that's what I'm hearing you describe is that is in all of us. And the world needs it. The world needs it.
Yeah. I mean, I look at coaching as standing on this cliff with a client. We're standing on the cliff of what is, because we all start here in the status quo, the comfort zone. And then there's the cliff that's facing us, which is a little bit higher. The sun's shining on it. And that is what will be. So what can we create? But of course, there's like this dark chasm of fear between those two. Like, are you supposed to leap? Do you grab a vine? It's up to the client, but the willingness to spelunk down the chasm and see what the hell's down there, see if there's actually anything real down there, that is brave work. And what are you going to light it up with? Well, you're going to light it up with your full self-expression and the audacity to fricking do it anyway, to figure it out. And God, like just being in that conversation every day with people is something I just totally live for. I freaking love it. I love when people are able to do that and see their possibility. Yeah,
it's amazing. So let's cover the fourth permission, which is glow in the light. So how is that different from permission to glow in the dark, this idea of glowing in the light?
Articulating this permission was the hardest work I've had to do in my career to date. One of my good friends, fellow coaches, Laura Neff, she's been a big supporter and follower of my work for a long time. And she said, Casey, I love the 3 permissions because that's what there were at the time. But what if that's not enough? What if glowing in the dark is just not enough? What's beyond that? And I thought, oh crap, I guess it would be glowing in the light. And when we sat there for a minute, and I made the sound, that maybe Keanu Reeves made in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I was just like, whoa, what could that mean? So when I had to sit down and write it, I had to, I was doing a lot of meditation, had to really feel into what this was asking of me. And honestly, I think this is what whatever our creator is, whether that's a divine source or whatever's guiding the unfolding of the universe, would be asking us for cooperation, would be asking us to figure out ways to transcend our needy, greedy, selfish needs in service of the greater collective. And that's what permission to glow in the light is that as we're able to uplift and inspire others, we can all glow equally in that light because it should be made available to all of us. So I think of the permission to glow in the light as, how do we commit? We've done our own work at the individual level of chilling, feeling, glowing in our own darkness. How do we put that in service of the greater good?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's the thing is I think it's such a gift, even as you said, these were kind of stages that people kind of go through. And it's almost like this gift to be comfortable enough in your own skin and confident enough in your own skin. And perhaps it's just, you might say, Casey, it's you're standing in a stage of your spiritual growth where you're so comfortable wanting other people to glow. And it's almost like, I don't need to take all the light here. Right? Like in essence, I actually want it to be more reflected off of me and onto you, is such a powerful place to stand. And it does take, not all leaders are comfortable doing that, right? They kind of are like, I need all the light. It's, it's that ego driving us. I need to take in all the light versus let me reflect it back out to others, because that's where the power resides.
Well, and sadly, and we've seen this very viscerally the last few years, leadership is a great line of work for narcissists, because who doesn't want to be in charge when you're a narcissist? And that is the, kind of the shadow figure of the permission to glow in the light, which is dark star. They're not willing or able to let anybody else glow because it's only about them. And they don't ask or need or receive help because, I got this. The permission to glow in the light is symbolized by the lighthouse. It's a collective of lighthouses. As one shines, we all will shine. And it takes a certain level of selflessness and confidence and humility, certainly, to be able to allow others to shine and glow as they're meant to. And true conscious leadership, I think, is seeing the opportunity to develop others, to hire people who are more talented than you, to show you how it's done. And I'm so endlessly inspired by my leaders who do that. And they've created cultures and teams that allow everyone to glow in that light. And that's what abundant business success looks like. That's what abundant impact in the world looks like as an organization, is allowing others to come together to uplift and not compete.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that there are great examples out there that demonstrate that it's possible and that it works.
Yeah, and I think we're alive at a time where we're still growing out of like our, industrial age notions of scarcity, and it's a very volatile time and certainly painful time to be witness to all of this stuff, and the crises facing humanity are so formidable. How else could they possibly be solved than together? Mm-hmm. That's the only possibility. So if it's not climate change, it's political discourse. If it's not that, it's financial equity on some level. But this one scared me, and it still scares me that it's so powerful to be with, and so far off on some days that how do we even get past ourselves to want to? But again, the leaders that I aspire to be with, they give us that permission. They know it's possible.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, one thing I wanted to come back to that you talked about at the beginning was this idea of capacity. So people listening to Sustainable Ambition, like, want to find more career and life fulfillment with more ease while avoiding burnout. So how do I be ambitious, but like with boundaries and avoiding burnout? And one of the things you talk about is this idea of expanding our capacities to include everything life is throwing at us, and to hold more, which is such an interesting concept to think like, hey, in all of this, like chilling, accepting it all, feeling it all, it's actually like take it in all in, and use it all, and not pushing what life throws at us aside. And it's like, that's what actually allows us to transcend overwhelm and disruption, I believe you think. Yeah. And so I want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly. And sure. And just because I think it's such a powerful concept around this, which is, the permission to chill is powerful in and of itself, right? To kind of like slow things down. Right. But can you say just a little bit more about, because you mentioned this whole capacity thing before and expanding our capacity. And I wanted to just come back to it and just hit on it a little bit.
Yeah. So when I think of capacity, and with due props to Stephen Covey for production capability, he talked about nurturing the goose that lays the golden eggs. I mean, that's how I think about capacity. And so there's a distinction though between taking more in. I would never advise taking in all of the crazy insanity of this world and keeping it in there. We want to allow it to flow through us. And in coaching, we watch the content of the client's words kind of flow like a river. It's endless. It'll always be there tomorrow. We're more concerned with the context. What are their stories? What's their relationship to that river? So when I think of chill, the goal there, the muscle that we build with permission to chill, is discernment, the wisdom to know the difference in the serenity prayer. What serves me and what doesn't, And that increases our capacity to just know what serves us and what doesn't. It opens up capacity to not worry about the small crap that doesn't serve us. Feel nurtures our intuition to more guide our actions towards right action versus action for action's sake. We listen to our bodies to direct us. Permission to glow in the dark is about the capacity around just more audacity to be bold, to find a deeper reserve of courage inside of ourselves. And like we said, with the fourth permission is to just develop our unlimited potential for collaboration, and all the stuff that brings up with us because we want to compete. So the world is asking more of us than ever before. And the capacity has to expand someplace. And I don't believe it's going to expand at the level of our calendar. I don't think Microsoft or whoever is going to develop a calendar that has more hours on it for us to book crap in. It doesn't always expand. Money certainly doesn't expand our capacity, because I coach extremely wealthy, set people that struggle with the same things. I think it has to be negotiated on the soul level to find that bigger space, that bigger territory inside ourselves, to be ourselves.
So great. Well, you do this yourself. You have a family of 5. You are running a business. What was I thinking, Kathy? I don't know. Well, I mean, you've given us the roadmap, right? You just said. So how do you try to live the 4 permissions in your own life to increase your capacity to kind of hold all of this?
Yeah. So people with kids, just listen up for a second, because this was the best wisdom I ever got. It was from a good friend, Eric Klein. Eric Klein runs this great organization in San Diego called Wisdom Heart. And he's a very accomplished corporate coach and also yogi. He's been a yogi forever, meditating every single day for maybe 45, 50 years. He's a brilliant dude. And he raised 2 brilliant, beautiful yogi boys. And these guys work at my retreats, teaching yoga to my guests. And so I was like asking him, I'm like, Sensei, what is the secret to parenting? Because your kids are amazing, And he said, well, the good news is they don't tune into your daily, tantrums or freakouts, whatever. They tune into the long game arc of what you're doing. So if you're somebody who's working on improving themselves, they will become somebody who values working on and improving themselves. And so I've been giving myself the permission to meditate for, well over a decade now. So I think my kids know that as rough around the edges as I can be, because I'm a human being and a dad with too much on his plate sometimes, that I am willing to give myself that permission, and it gets them curious about it. So, feeling has been later to the mix, but raising two daughters, I have two daughters and a son, just showing vulnerable emotion and encouraging them to do so. My wife's always been really brilliant with that, and I'm trying to catch up. Glow in the dark. I've always been a performer since I was a kid. I used to tour in a ska band and play music all over the world. My daughter's following that same path, and that comes a little bit more naturally in the Carter house. It's something that we do for fun as a family, is go out to see rock shows and bands and just enjoy that performative aspect. And I think all of us as parents can do a better job with figuring out ways to serve as a family, to donate our time at soup kitchens or handing out food. I mean, there's so many people in need right now. So that it is juggling a lot, but, I'd say out of all of them, for me and my path has been to meditate. If I'm meditating consistently, the time expands to allow for what needs to happen. If my meditation practice is struggling, and right now it's in a challenging place with the book coming out and a lot of these interviews and stuff, I just noticed that as I get more, tight with my time, my kids get a little bit more anxious. Things start to feel a little rough around the edges. So yeah, I'd say if you could only do one thing, meditate consistently, minimum 15 minutes a day, every day, no excuses, no matter what. Time will expand for you. So that's been my experience so far, and I hope to keep improving upon it.
That's so great. I love that advice. And that's that pausing and chilling that I imagine that you said that you always make a part of your practice when you're coaching people. Just a final question before I ask you for a final piece of wisdom to leave folks with. But, so many people, including myself, say they want to meditate and never get to it. I kind of think my walking in the park or my swimming kind of serves at that. But this might be too big of a last minute question, Casey. No. But if how can people, if they want to start this, is there a place where you'd point them, even a program that you offer that, where should they go to kind of easily create a life-changing meditation habit?
Yeah. So probably the best place now, I think, I'm non-partial. It's something I had to create for busy people because I'm one of those. It took me many years to be able to sit still for 5 minutes, let alone, the type of meditation I practice now at Christmas time. We sit for 8 hours on Christmas. Could you imagine sitting still for that long, let alone meditating the whole time? It's brutal. But there's very simple, easy to follow paths. I have one on Insight Timer. If you search my name, Christopher Carter with a K and 2 Fs, that sequence of guided meditations, it's like the dad. I try to do the dad holding the two-wheeler bike seat thing. So it's like, we're going to do this for 5 minutes, we're going to spend just doing these 3 phases, like getting our own attention, bringing the attention back for a while, and then directing our attention to our highest good. We do that for 5 minutes. Then we progress into 10 minutes. And then by the time we're at 15 minutes, I'm letting go of that bike seat for 5 to 7 minutes of silence in the middle of the guided meditation. And that's really how I learned, many years ago in Chicago, I learned this practice sitting on crowded buses on the Red Line in Chicago, going on my morning commute, people bumping into me, ripping out my earbuds at the time. But that determination to sit consistently, so I would say walking in the park is amazing. Running is amazing. Having your morning coffee on your back porch, all those things are beautiful, but it's not the same act as sitting still with yourself and quieting the mind as many times as necessary. Most people think that meditation is the absence of thought. It's not at all. It's the time you spend clearing the thoughts and bringing the attention back. Just that little deposit of time each day is super transformative. Yeah, and I'd love for people to check out the 30-day challenge inside Insight Timer. That's the way to do it.
Definitely capture that.
Yeah, and Kathy, that's a standing offer to just be your distant meditation teacher and coach. I'm happy to help you create that habit.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is great, Casey. I'm so looking forward to your book coming out again for folks, Permission to Glow, A Spiritual Guide to Epic Leadership, which is coming out on October 5th. So just a final question. Is there a final piece of wisdom you'd leave our listeners with?
Yeah, the final piece of wisdom, it all kind of begins and ends with you. We're here to receive the gift of being ourselves. And that is a gift that's so precious that any of us will do whatever we can to resist receiving that gift. We'll follow other people's scripts. We'll talk poorly about ourselves. We'll ride ourselves like some crappy little horse jockey. You get to receive this gift. And what can you do each day to practice receiving the gift of being yourself? To be quiet with yourself, to feel what you're really trying to tell yourself, to unapologetically be yourself and on blast, and to give yourself over in service to some greater good. So that's what I would leave people with.
Wow. That's really, really powerful. And it's so interesting, just embrace being yourself. And it's so interesting what you say, how much we resist that. And
it's as simple and as hard as that.
Exactly. Exactly. And yet here you are, you have these 4 permissions. So I know people can find you at thisepiclife.com. I'll also share, capture that in the show notes. Is there anything else you want to highlight or anything we can do for you? Like pick up your book when it comes out on October 5th.
Yeah. The book's open for pre-order at September 7th. Really what I'm most excited about is getting bulk orders through organizations. So I work with a lot of HR people and leaders, and I really feel that there's a real need for this with upcoming leadership. This next generation of leadership is truly ready for it. Those are the people I mostly work with. So yeah, it's all about the book at this point. And the book is found at permissiontoglowbook.com.
Perfect. Wonderful. Casey, thank you so much for being with me today. This has been a fabulous conversation. I'm so excited about the book and look forward to getting it when it comes out on October 5th.
Oh, thank you so much, Kathy. It's always a pleasure meeting with fellow coaches because they just ask the best questions. So thank you.
Thank you. Find more inspiring interviews and get show notes for this episode at sustainableambition.com/podcast. Make sure you don't miss an episode or my insider tips, guides, and tools by signing up for Sustainable Ambition Forum, my twice-monthly newsletter. Sign up at sustainableambition.com/subscribe. Thanks again for joining me. Speak with you next time.